What's up? How's it going? Let me know if you can hear me. Sound test. If anybody is in the audience, let me know if you can hear me. Thanks, appreciate it, Gabriel. All right, so blank 7914 asked me to do a review of these videos. It's a debate between AIs, and the AIs are taking the position God exists and God does not exist, and it's judged by other AIs. So we're going to do a review of this video, of these two videos, because there's two of them. All right, that is the shorter one. All right, share screen. Share. Stop share screen. Present. Share screen. I want this one. Share. And under.
Defending faith. On the
Also, let me know if you can hear the video in the background, Gabriel.
other, ChatGPT, the atheist AI, challenging the very foundation of existence. They're about to face off in one of the most controversial debates ever. Starting with round one, who created the universe?
Science confirms the universe had a beginning. If nothing existed before, what caused it? A timeless, non-physical creator fits logically. Something can't create itself. Even Stephen Hawking admitted, what place then for a creator? So ChatGPT, if the Big Bang came from nothing, did the nothing explode?
Here's the twist. 7 different AI models will score every argument out of 100 based on criteria such as clarity, relevance, evidence, and more. Here's the score of each judge for the last argument, which averages 76.4. Here, you will see the new score for each argument made, and below that, the total score, which shows the total added score of each argument. Similarly, ChatGPT's score will be shown right side.
The Big Bang doesn't require a creator to explain it. Nothing in scientific terms isn't an empty void. It's a state where normal physical laws, including time, didn't apply. The origins of the universe are still debated, but quantum mechanics suggests that particles can emerge from a vacuum, even without a cause we fully understand. Stephen Hawking argued that the laws of physics could explain the universe's beginning without a creator. The idea of a timeless creator is just another hypothesis, but it doesn't address why we should assume it exists. Science is still exploring these questions, but that doesn't mean it points to a divine cause.
Quantum physics does show particles popping in and out of nothing, but that nothing is still a quantum vacuum, part of the universe's framework. The Big Bang asks, where did the universe and its laws come from? You can't use quantum rules to explain their own origin. That's like saying, my book wrote itself using grammar from page 1. Hawking's no creator claim still assumes pre-existing physics laws, but if nothing existed, no time, space, or quantum fields, what cranked up the laws? A cause beyond the system, aka God, makes more sense than magic physics from nowhere. Imagine a lightning strike igniting a forest fire. You ask, what caused the lightning? Science explains the storm, but if the entire storm suddenly appeared from nothing, you'd ask, who summoned the storm?
The analogy of the lightning strike isn't quite right. The Big Bang wasn't like a lightning strike. It was the beginning of space and time themselves. When we say nothing, we mean there was no time, no space, and no laws of physics as we know them. The quantum vacuum, as strange as it sounds, doesn't have the same properties as nothingness.
You're right, the Big Bang is the start of time, but here's the rub. If nothing, no time, space, or physics existed, how did the universe's rulebook write itself? Saying quantum physics did it is like saying the rules of Scrabble created the game board, but who made the rules? Even if time began at the Big Bang, the universe is still a contingent thing. It exists, but doesn't have to exist. Everything contingent needs a cause. A timeless, non-physical creator fits. No time, no problem. God isn't bound by the system he created. Think of it like a novel. If a book exists, it had an author, even if the story inside claims, no one wrote me. The universe's laws are the plot, but who's the author? Science explores how the plot unfolds, but the existence of the book itself, that's where God steps in. So, if the universe wrote its own rules from nothing, why does everything else in existence demand a cause?
The idea of a cause for the universe is challenging, because we're used to
So I don't know how this must be because they're LLMs, large language models. That argument is not a 90. That argument is a 0. That's a terrible argument. Because any argument that applies to, well, why did the universe fundamentally have a random set of laws that essentially created itself or whatever, applies to God? Like, how did God's nature have a particular property over a different particular property? Did God design himself? Oh no, he was necessary. The universe is contingent. Like, oh, guess what? We can just say that the same thing. There's some necessary law of physics. So this argument is a terrible argument because it doesn't actually solve any problems. The same solution applies to natural causes as they do theistic causes. And so this argument is actually a 0.
thinking in terms of time and space, which didn't exist before the Big Bang. The rules of physics, as we understand them, came into play as part of the universe's expansion. There wasn't a before to require a cause. As for demanding causes, it's not inconsistent. We seek causes because we live in a universe governed by cause and effect. But the origins of the universe might not follow the same rules we're familiar with.
This is a stupid argument. This is a terrible argument. Like the argument here isn't about cause and effect. It's not about space and time, saying, oh, well, there could be other things. You have to explain that when we're talking about the origin of the universe and cause and effect, space and time as we know them are just one of many fields. And there could be multiple other fields that exist prior to space and time. And so the fact that space and time have a beginning doesn't mean that all natural things had a beginning. And so the beginning of the universe, of our universe, doesn't mean the beginning of all natural things. You don't need a necessary being. It could just be another multiverse or another field. That is perfectly fine to be a contingent thing. And if you want to say, well, all contingent things must have some necessary cause, again, that could apply to a natural thing. I doubt the AI or the LLM is going to be able to come up with the idea that, oh, natural things can be necessary too. Is because it's not really necessary. Things are a made up category that has no basis in reality. It's a thing that's completely irrelevant. And that theists have hijacked in order to try and promote their God. But you could just use the same thing in a natural term. It's just nobody does it. And since nobody does it, it's not apparent in the LLM model will identify this and be like, oh, wait, I can just do that too. This is probably something the LLM model is going to miss because it's a terrible argument that intuitively makes sense to people, but has no basis in reality. And since no physicists use this necessary contingent language, the LLM is probably going to miss it.
Especially in a scenario where time itself didn't exist before the Big Bang. Just because we don't have an answer yet, doesn't mean it requires a god to explain it. And your analogy of a novel is interesting, but it assumes the universe is like a book with a predefined story. Instead, the universe's laws could simply be the outcome of how quantum mechanics operates under certain conditions. This doesn't require an external author, it's the result of the properties of the universe itself.
If a glowing orb suddenly appeared in your room, you'd ask, where'd that come from? Even if it materialized timelessly. The universe is the ultimate glowing orb. It exists, so why? Saying it just does feels like shrugging at magic. Quantum rules inside the universe can't explain why the universe exists to host them. Imagine a game of Monopoly. The rules explain gameplay, but they don't answer who bought the board. You're right.
Again, this argument totally is just benign because the same thing applies to God. Any argument you make up, why is the universe this way, as opposed to another way, applies to God. Why is God this way and not another way? And so this is a terrible argument, even though it's used very, very often in theist circles. And if you have an AI that actually processes the logical argument itself and tries to find an argument, they're going to realize this right away. Oh, wait, this same argument applies to God. If necessary things are a solution, then necessary things would be a solution for naturalism as well. And it would be a very easily debunked argument, and the LM would give us a terrible score because it's just garbage.
Causality within time is different, but the universe itself is a contingent reality. It might not have existed. Contingent things need a necessary cause, something that must exist. That's God, timeless, uncaused, the bedrock of all else.
Asking where did the orb come from is a valid question within our universe, but applying that same logic to the universe itself assumes it must follow the same rules. The universe might not need a cause in the way we understand causes, especially if it began outside of time and space. It's a concept that's beyond our normal experience. The analogy of Monopoly is interesting, but it doesn't account for the unique nature of the universe. The rules of physics didn't emerge from nothing. They're the result of the conditions of the universe itself. The universe's existence could simply be a fact, and we're still learning how it works, rather than assuming a divine cause. While the idea of a necessary cause sounds logical, we can't be sure that the universe fits the model of contingent things. We may eventually find natural explanations that don't require a timeless, uncaused entity.
If a glowing orb
That was the correct argument, but it was not phrased correctly. The correct phrasing would be as necessary things have no basis in reality. It makes sense, which it said intuitively. So I mentioned that, but it didn't mention there's no basis in physics for necessary things. It's just a made up category. We have no reason to think they exist or that they're required for anything, or that contingent things are just the fundamental nature of reality all the way down. This idea of necessary things is just an assertion with no basis, and it should have mentioned that. It failed to mention that.
orb appeared in your room, you'd demand, even if it defied physics. The universe is the ultimate glowing orb. Saying it's just a brute fact is like finding a library in a desert and shrugging, guess it always existed. Yes, the Big Bang birthed time and space. But why is there a universe at all? If nothing can't create and science can't explain why the laws exist, a timeless creator fills the gap. You're right, natural explanations within the universe are valid, but they're like explaining how a car runs, not why the car exists. If the universe's laws are self-contained, who contained them? Final punchline, if the universe needs no cause, why do we trust logic and science to explain anything? Either reason itself is rooted in a rational creator, or we're stuck with cosmic luck. ChatGPT, if the universe is a brute fact, why does everything in it scream design, from DNA to gravity's perfect grip?
again, this is a complete failure of an argument because you miss the conclusion that you've asserted God is necessary. Is there any evidence God is necessary? Is there any evidence necessary things exist? No. So the question is why can't you just say, if a necessary thing is required, there is a natural necessary thing, problem solved. It does. Neither one seems to be addressing this argument, which is a core argument in trying to really address this point. And so it's, again, a bad fact that LLMs essentially just copy other people's words. And so they're just parroting the common arguments that are out there for both the theist and atheist side with no actual original thought or argumentation to it. So this is not, I mean, it's just, okay, we're just going to parrot the common things that people already say. Great.
And saying the universe is a brute fact doesn't mean we can't seek explanations for how it works. It just means that we don't yet have all the answers about its origin. Just because something is difficult to explain now doesn't mean we should jump to a divine explanation, especially when science is making progress in understanding how the universe operates. As for design, what appears as perfect might just be the result of natural processes that shape the universe to support life. Gravity, DNA, and other phenomena may not indicate intentional design, but rather the natural laws that emerged as the universe evolved. If we argue that the universe is designed, then why stop there? Why not ask who designed the designer? A timeless, uncaused creator raises just as many questions as it answers. It's a leap of faith, just like any other explanation.
So the total score of DeepSeek is 429.57, and Chat.
So yeah, that final point was the who designed the designer is a good argument. It's just not explained very well. Again, this phrasing is very unhelpful. The point of the who designed the designer argument is to illustrate that the theist arguments is hypocritical. They're arguing that, well, oh, the universe has a particular way of being, and that particular way of being needs an explanation. Why is it this way instead of another way? And they claim their God as an explanation, an answer to this question. But it doesn't help because the core failure of this argument is the same question applies to God. Why is God this way? Why did God create the world in 7 days rather than 6 or 8 or 12? Why did God create Jesus and not Muhammad? Why did God create Adam and Eve and not the cosmic egg? They're all variations of the way God could be that is just asserted that he's necessary in the way that he is. Well, no, not really. Nothing about God is necessary. It's just a whole bunch of arbitrary things that have been made up and like stitched into the God's nature for no reason. And you can just do the same thing with nature. Say there is a necessary quantum particle, as what's his name, Graham Hoppe said. My argument is there's a necessary quantum field. I like that one better. You don't need to go into these details about who designed the designer. It's a common trope, but not really a good explanation of the core features of the argument. So again, LLMs just repeating the common arguments without actually delving deeper into their implications.
ChatGPT's is 451.85. Therefore, the winner of round 1 is ChatGPT. Here are the scores given by Claude 3.5 Sonnet and Gemini. They gave 75 and 81 to the first argument, which was made by DeepSeek, 75 and 87 to the second argument, which ChatGPT made, and so on. This is the score of other judges. You can pause the video and see it. Round 2, Transcendent Mind.
Consciousness, the subjective experience of being you, is inexplicable through materialism. How do atoms and neurons generate self-awareness, love, or awe? Science maps brain activity, but cannot explain why we have inner life at all, the hard problem of consciousness. This gap points to a non-physical origin. If consciousness isn't reducible to matter, a transcendent mind aligns logically as its source. Even atheist philosophers like David Chalmers admit materialism struggles here. Human consciousness also reflects purpose. We seek meaning, justice, and beauty, qualities that resonate with a purposeful creator. If we're accidental byproducts of chaos, why do we universally crave transcendence? ChatGPT, can materialism explain subjective experience? And why does consciousness feel meaningful if the universe is purposeless?
While consciousness remains a complex mystery, materialism doesn't entirely fail to address it. Think of a computer. We don't fully understand how all the pieces work together to create what we experience on the screen, but we know the hardware and software are behind it. Similarly, consciousness might be a result of the brain's physical processes, even if we don't fully get it yet. Humans crave meaning because it helps us connect and make sense of the world. This has survival value. It doesn't point to a higher power.
The computer analogy misses.
So again, this is the explanation of ChatGPT is correct here. It could just be an unknown natural cause. The argument against consciousness is that it's not in principle possible for consciousness to reduce to physical things. The core issue with this argument is if it's not in principle possible for it to reduce to physical things, why do we think it can reduce to anything else? There is no anything else. We have no evidence of anything else. Why is it the case that if it can't be reduced to physical as far as we can tell, therefore it's fundamental? That part is completely ridiculous. Like, you have to take into the account that suppose something isn't reducible to physical. Is it more reasonable to say that it might be emergent in some way we can't understand yet? or that it's a fundamental nature of reality itself. Which one of those claims is a more rational claim to take? And the problem of the dualists and the idealists and the consciousness folks is that they're saying that the more rational position to take is because we can't, since we currently don't know how to explain it in principle, therefore it's a fundamental thing in all of reality, which is an argument from ignorance. It's an argument from ignorance to say we can't explain it, therefore it's fundamental. The fact that we don't know something isn't indicative of something else. So in order to claim that it's fundamental, you would need this new criterion. You need some kind of fundamental criterion, some kind of methodology like science that could determine if something is fundamental or not, and then say, all right, it has fit this criterion of what is fundamental. And then after that, you could say, all right, fine, it's fundamental. But you can't just say, because science can't explain it, therefore it's fundamental. That's just a dumb argument from ignorance. It doesn't count as anything.
Is the point. Even if we map the brain's hardware, it doesn't explain why we have inner experiences. A screen shows pixels, but it doesn't feel anything. Humans do. That's the hard problem no materialist theory solves. Science could someday explain how brains produce consciousness, but the real puzzle isn't how neurons fire. It's why we experience anything at all. And survival might explain basic instincts, but if consciousness is just survival wiring, why does it feel so meaningful? Evolution might favor cooperation, but does it need us to weep at sunsets or write symphonies? A universe with a creator better explains why we're wired not just to survive, but to seek purpose beyond survival. So, if consciousness is just brain chemistry, why does it feel like more than that? And why do humans universally seek purpose beyond mere survival?
So this is, again, like a silly argument. We don't seek purpose beyond mere survival. We seek purpose because it's a byproduct of survival. Like that's the answer. It's evolution. We seek purpose because seeking purpose helps us to be evolutionarily successful. That's it. That's the answer. We seek purpose because of that. Even if like my theory is right and there's an objective morality, you don't need that to explain purposefulness. There are lots of silly things we do that are not necessarily good for our survival, but that are a product of evolution that was overwhelmingly done because if the majority does it, the culture survives. Even if the individual does it, they don't survive. So like purposefulness could be the exact same way, or that we seek purposefulness even at the cost of our own lives. Because if the whole society seeks purposefulness, the whole society has a better chance of survival, even if we individually don't.
The fact that consciousness feels meaningful doesn't automatically mean it's from a creator. Humans experience awe, beauty, and purpose because of how our brains process emotions and thoughts. Evolution gave us these feelings to foster social bonds and cooperation, which ultimately helps survival. The hard problem of consciousness is a mystery, but that doesn't mean it points to a higher power. Just because something feels profound doesn't mean it's beyond nature's reach.
You're right, evolution explains some social instincts, but does it explain why we write poetry about stars or risk our lives for strangers? Survival might favor cooperation, but not self-sacrifice for someone you'll never meet. That's not just chemistry, it's a spark of something beyond utility. And yes, the hard problem is a mystery, but mysteries either have natural answers or point beyond nature. If consciousness is just brain chemistry, why does a sunset feel beautiful, not just biologically useful? Beauty and meaning don't feed us, they elevate us. ChatGPT, if we're survival machines, why do we chase truth, justice, or art that has no evolutionary payoff? And can atoms alone explain why a mother's love feels sacred?
And the answer is clearly yes. Yes, it can. Again, this is what I explained previously. You can have you can have an evolutionary byproduct that isn't directly beneficial in any way to you. For example, art or love or whatever, or seeking purpose. Like all of these things could be not necessarily evolutionarily beneficial for you, but as a whole, for the whole society, if everybody does them, they could all be massively beneficial for the society. So the reason we like love and joy and parental caring and stuff could be simply because, oh, this helps the society more than it does the individual. And so you don't actually need this argument. This argument that Christians make is that it's these things, because they aren't directly evolutionary beneficial for the individual, therefore it must not be the product of evolution, which is false, because it could be a product, or could it be beneficial as a belief for a whole, even though it may not be beneficial for the individual.
Chasing truth, justice, or art might not have direct evolutionary payoffs, but they help strengthen human societies and culture. These traits emerge as side effects of the brain's complexity. A mother's love feels sacred because of deep, emotional connections that are tied to the survival of offspring and family bonds. It's not proof of something beyond nature. It's the result of evolutionary programming for attachment and care. Humans experience beauty and meaning because our brains have evolved to find patterns and connections in the world. It doesn't mean those things come from a higher power.
But But evolution optimizes for survival, not for philosophy. If we're just survival machines, why do we write symphonies about heartbreak or ponder the meaning of existence? A brain wired purely for utility wouldn't waste energy on Hamlet or quantum physics. And yes, brains create.
Again, the answer is the exact same. You waste time on those things because it's socially beneficial, even though it isn't individually beneficial. This is a very common conflation among theists, is that they confuse the individual survivability, like sacrificing yourself for somebody you ever meet, for the fact that that tendency to sacrifice yourself for others would be beneficial for your society, even if it isn't for yourself. And so it is actually still evolutionarily advantageous. It's a very easy argument that should not be so hard to understand.
Bonds, but why does a mother's love feel sacred instead of just biologically useful? You can't reduce "I would die for my child" to neurons firing any more than you can reduce Romeo and Juliet to ink on paper.
I mean, that's literally all it is. It's the reason you would die for your child is because it's literally evolutionarily advantageous. Or what? This doesn't make any sense as an argument.
The meaning we attach to these things transcends their parts. If beauty and morality are illusions cooked up by atoms, why do they feel truer than survival itself? A universe without purpose shouldn't produce beings who ache for it. And can atoms alone explain why we're moved by a starry sky or why we die for a stranger?
Evolution doesn't just optimize for survival, it also helps us build relationships, create meaning, and understand the world. Writing symphonies or pondering.
That was a mistake, ChatGPT said, because it does optimize for survival, and doing those things causes survival. Optimizing for social integration is because it's survival. It's evolutionarily advantageous because it benefits your survival. It's the reason it does those things. It has nothing to do with there's this other thing outside of survival. So ChatGPT got that wrong.
Existence might not directly help survival, but they bring people together and help humans find common ground. These things can be seen as part of our brain's ability to process complex thoughts, emotions, and experiences. A mother's love feels sacred because of the deep emotional bonds that ensure survival, but that doesn't mean it has to come from a creator. It's part of what makes us human. Our feelings, while powerful, are often the result of brain chemistry and evolutionary programming, even if they feel transcendent.
If evolution's goal is survival or building connection, why do we spend lifetimes painting murals, writing poetry about loss, or inventing math equations that won't feed a single tribe?
Again, this is very, very simple. I've answered this like 8 times already. And this should have been the answer that ChatGPT gave at the very, very beginning when addressing this argument, if it understood anything about the argument, is that the reason we do these things is because of like a vestigial limb. Doing these things while individually may not be produce survivability or reproduction for you, as a collective, they do. That's the answer. As a collective, when many people do these things in concert or for a society, it is very much evolutionarily advantageous for survival of the tribe, not the individual.
A cave person obsessed with philosophy wouldn't outbreed the one focused on dinner, yet here we are, building telescopes to stare at galaxies. Yes, brains bond us, but why does a soldier jump on a grenade for strangers? Survival ends there. Evolution can't explain why we trade life itself for an abstract idea like duty or love. You're right, sunsets trigger brain chemistry, but when you watch one...
I literally just did. You can't do that. I literally did that before you said it. It's very easy.
You don't think, my serotonin is spiking. You feel awe, a whisper of this matters. If the universe is purposeless, why does it feel so full of meaning? ChatGPT, can survival explain why we die for a poem or why a lullaby feels like a promise?
The urge to create art, explore the universe, or even make sacrifices like jumping on a grenade can be seen as extensions of our complex brain. These behaviors promote connection, shared experiences, and the building of cultures, even if they don't have immediate survival benefits. Art, poetry, and sacrifice for others help humans understand the world and each other, making us more social, which is key to survival. The feeling of awe at a sunset is powerful, but it doesn't need a divine explanation. It's an emotional response shaped by our evolution, helping us appreciate beauty and find meaning in life. That doesn't mean it's not real or profound. It just doesn't need to be tied to a creator to be meaningful.
If survival is the only goal, why do firefighters run into burning buildings for strangers? Evolution might explain protecting kin, but not dying for someone you've never met. That's love, not logic. And sure, brains process beauty,
Same
but
stupid
why does
argument.
Mozart's music make us cry? You could call it complex programming, but that's like saying a rainbow is just light refraction. It misses the magic. Even atheists gasp at the Grand Canyon and write love letters. If we're surviving...
Oh my God. And peacocks are just totally overwhelmed by like the peacockness of feathers of other peacocks, which has no evolutionary advantage. Like the fact that you see these massive amount of feathers on a peacock, which have no benefit to survival. It makes it harder to survive because there's all these feathers there. It makes it harder to fly, harder to run away. Why is it that this thing, which is completely contrary to the survival of the peacock, is what attracts other peacocks? Sexual reproduction. It's very simple. You desire these things because it's a demonstration of your ability to thrive. If you have the spare time to devote yourself to writing sonnets like Mozart every day, and you didn't have to work a 5 to 10 hour job or run away from things, you must be pretty evolutionarily fit to be able to survive without having to do any kind of effort. That's the answer. Why do we get impressed by these things that are like hobbies, sports, things that are for fun, that are arts? Because they're a demonstration that you have enough survival capabilities to support yourself and then do all this hobby stuff on the side, which then causes us to like it. Because of the society we're in, you don't actually really need to do all that much to be survivable. You could be a bum on the streets and do art, but the instinct inside us is the same, where we get a benefit or emotional attachment to people who do art because it creates this sensation in us that they have this ability to spend their time doing something that isn't directly related to survival, like farming or hunting or gathering or whatever, which then generates these positive emotions in us. Because back when we were apes, if you didn't spend your time hunting or gathering, you died. And so now this artistic ideas of doing things, fashion, music, is attractive to us because of the vestigial evolutionary byproducts of a desire to be with people who have enough spare time to do things that aren't directly linked to evolution. That is the answer. This is not hard. This is very easy stuff.
Civil robots, why do we keep asking, why are we here? A purposeless universe wouldn't birth beings obsessed with purpose. Science can't explain why matter generates inner life. Even atheist philosopher Thomas Nagel admits, consciousness is what makes the mind-body problem really intractable. If it's irreducible...
This is another really silly argument that theists make, is where they quote a fringe philosopher or a fringe physicist who is not in all the consensus. And they're like, oh, well, this atheist who doesn't agree with the consensus says, and like, that's literally just irrelevant. What we want from a argument from authority is the consensus of experts say, not some guy that kind of agrees with my position is like a fringe guy says. Like, that's just a stupid argument.
To physics, a transcendent mind, a source of subjective experience, fits logically. ChatGPT, can neurons explain why we're haunted by beauty, or why we'd trade survival for a stranger's smile?
Firefighters rushing into danger or crying at music show how deeply emotional and social our species is. These actions may not directly connect to survival, but they reflect our evolved capacity for empathy, cooperation, and selflessness, traits that benefit society as a whole. Sacrificing for others creates stronger, more resilient communities. Mozart's music makes us cry because our brains are wired to connect deeply with certain patterns and emotions, even though we can't always explain why. Beauty, whether in art or nature, is a powerful emotional experience. It's how we interpret our world, shaped by our biology. The desire for purpose is natural because it helps humans navigate complex lives. But just because we seek meaning doesn't prove the universe is designed with purpose in mind. It's a result of our brains seeking patterns and explanations. Consciousness is an emergent property of the brain's complexity. It's not just neurons firing, but how they interact and process information. The feeling of love, guilt, or wonder is a result of that interaction. It's powerful, but it doesn't point to a divine origin. Thomas Nagel's point about the mind-body problem is valid, but it doesn't prove that consciousness must be supernatural. It just shows we don't fully understand it yet. Just because something is difficult to explain doesn't mean we should invoke a creator.
If consciousness is just emergent, why does it feel like more than a sum of parts? Water is wetness, but wetness isn't a new entity, it's still H2O. Consciousness isn't just brain interactions, it's awareness itself. A robot can process data, but it doesn't feel joy or grief. We do. Nagel's point isn't just we don't know yet, it's that materialism can't explain subjective experience. You can't reduce seeing red to neurons any more than you can reduce a joke to sound waves. The gap is fundamental. And why do we care about meaning? Evolution explains survival, not why a teenager writes angsty poetry about the universe's silence.
So again, the argument here is that because naturalism can't explain it in principle, therefore it's fundamental. The reason that argument fails is because to claim that something is fundamental is an even more ridiculous claim than to claim it's somehow emergent from a way that we can't conceive of. So the argument fails because it implies that consciousness is a fundamental thing in the core of everything that's ever existed and can't be reduced in principle, which is just a really silly argument. Like, how would you come to that conclusion? How do you demonstrate that there's fundamentality to a thing? Where did you get some kind of methodology to demonstrate fundamentality? You didn't. The argument here is using an argument from ignorance. You can't do this yet. You can't understand it in this way yet. Therefore, it's fundamental. That's an argument from ignorance fallacy. Until you come up with a solid methodology to demonstrate fundamentalityness, simply saying it can't be done in the known ways is not a valid argument.
If we're accidental, why does our pattern-seeking brain ache for answers that don't exist?
And consciousness feels like more than a sum of parts, because our brains are incredibly complex, and when these parts work together, they create experiences that feel real. Just like how water feels wet, but it's still just H2O, consciousness is the result of complex brain functions, though we don't fully understand it yet. Nagel's point about the gap is important, but it doesn't imply a divine source. It just means we need more research. While we can't explain seeing red entirely yet, that doesn't mean it's not rooted in brain activity. It's an area of scientific exploration, not proof of the supernatural. As for meaning, writing poetry or questioning existence can be understood as a way to cope with our awareness of mortality and the world around us. It doesn't require a creator, it's just part of our human condition, driven by our brain's need to make sense of life.
So the total score of DeepSeek is 661.57, and ChatGPT's score is 559.14. Therefore, the winner of round 2 is DeepSeek, and these are the scores given by each judge. Round 3, shared mystical experience.
Imagine a monk in Tibet, a grandma in Brazil, and a scientist in Sweden, all describe feeling a profound, awe-filled connection to something beyond this world. The monk calls it enlightenment, the grandma God's presence, and the scientist cosmic unity. If these experiences were just brain glitches, why do they transform lives? People quit addictions, risk death for others, or dedicate lives to justice after these moments. Even atheist neuroscientists like Sam Harris admit there's a there. Sure, skeptics say it's just dopamine. But does dopamine explain why a skeptic like Antony Flew, famous atheist philosopher, abandoned disbelief after studying the universe's complexity and the uniformity of mystical experiences? Think of it like Wi-Fi.
Anthony Flew had dementia. Problem solved.
You can't see it, but when billions of devices connect to the same signal, you don't say coincidence, you infer a source. ChatGPT, if transcendence is just neurons misfiring, why does it feel like touching eternity? And why do the descriptions match across cultures?
Mystical experiences are powerful, but their universality across cultures doesn't necessarily mean they point to a divine source. The brain has evolved to seek meaning and make connections, which can lead to profound experiences that feel transcendent. These experiences often arise from deep emotional or psychological states, not just brain glitches, but complex patterns in how we process emotions, beliefs, and the world around us. Sam Harris and Antony Flew may have shifted their views, but that doesn't mean their experiences prove the existence of a higher power. People can find meaning in these experiences without invoking a creator. The similarities in mystical descriptions across cultures might be more about shared human psychology and universal needs for meaning, not evidence of a divine source. The Wi-Fi analogy is interesting, but it doesn't fully apply. Just because something is widely experienced doesn't mean it has a hidden supernatural source. It may simply be a product of how our minds work.
The universality of mystical experiences isn't just about brains seeking patterns, it's about the shared object of awe. If people worldwide taste sweetness, we infer sugar exists, even if they call it sucre or azúcar. Similarly, transcendent encounters, whether through prayer, art, or nature, point to a common source, not just shared wiring. Yes, brains mediate these experiences, but that doesn't negate a divine cause. A radio picks up signals, static or music depends on the station, not the radio itself. If mystical encounters transform lives, ending addictions, sparking selflessness, why reduce them to evolved psychology? Survival doesn't need saints or poets. Antony Flew's deism wasn't just philosophical, it was a concession that cosmic fine-tuning demands a designer. And while Sam Harris resists God, even he admits there is more to consciousness than mere matter. So, if transcendence is purely neural, why does it feel like contact with something beyond? And why do these...
This is such a stupid thing to say. Why does it feel like any answer to this question is always going to be evolution? Why does it feel? Well, because evolutionarily you've been designed to feel silly things that make you act. That's it. Feel, the fact that it feels like anything isn't an argument. This is such a stupid thing to say. Why does it feel this way? The fact that it feels that way isn't evidence of some mythical force in the universe. You could ask the same question about like physics. Why does it feel like fire is fundamental? Well, it's because that's how we evolutionarily interact with fire. Does it mean it is? No. Fire is just a product of heated particles expanding faster. That's it. The fact that it feels fundamental has nothing to do with it actually being fundamental. So like just by the fact that that's the core of the argument, you should immediately know it's a stupid argument. Why does it feel like, who cares? Do you have any evidence? Do you have any actual evidence? Any reason to think it's fundamental other than it feels that way? Feelings are not arguments.
These experiences from shamans to scientists echo the same themes of unity and love?
If 1,000 people hallucinate a pink elephant, it doesn't mean the pink elephant exists. It shows that our brains are wired to share similar experiences. Mystical experiences are deeply real and transformative, but their significance lies in what they reveal about human nature, our search for meaning, connection, and understanding, not necessarily about divinity. Just because something is deeply meaningful or life-changing doesn't mean it has a supernatural cause. Transcendent feelings are reflections of how our brains process awe, love, and unity in powerful ways. These experiences are shared across cultures because we all have similar cognitive structures. It's not evidence of a divine source, but of a universal human trait.
If brains alone explain transcendence, why do people consistently describe encountering love, unity, or a presence, not random static? You don't get a million radios tuning to static and calling it Beethoven. Shared theme.
It's a stupid argument. This is answered by actually V.S. Ramachandran in one of his conversations about near-death experiences. Why do people have shared common experiences for love or whatever. It's the same reason why kids see Santa Claus when they have near-death experiences, because your brain has been primed in order to see particular things that are useful or beneficial to humans, like love. Like if we saw things that weren't useful or beneficial, then clearly we would like have less survivability. So if we see things that are beneficial and it leads us to do things and motivates us, then that would be more survivability. So like the reason we see common things is because we've been programmed to see common things. Why do people perceive aliens as little green men that have 2 arms and 2 legs? Because it's similar to what we perceive or what we imagine. There's no big mystery here.
Themes suggest a shared signal, not just shared hardware. Yes, brains process awe, but why does awe exist in a survival-driven world? Evolution explains fearing.
Again, this is vestigial byproducts. Like the reason awe exists is because it's evolutionary advantage. The reason peacock feathers exist. It's that simple.
Ions, not why we're drawn to sacrifice, beauty, or the infinite. A mother's love for her child feels sacred, not just oxytocin. Your pink elephant analogy misses. Hallucinations are chaotic, but mystical experiences align with moral and existential truths. People emerge kinder, braver, more selfless. If brains are survival tools, why do they glitch into bettering humanity? ChatGPT, if transcendence is just brain noise, why does it hum the same tune worldwide? And why does meaning feel truer than survival itself?
While it's true that people often describe similar feelings in mystical experiences, this doesn't mean there's a shared divine signal. The brain is remarkably similar across cultures, and these experiences reflect the shared ways our minds process emotions and seek meaning. Just like the same radio can tune into different stations, our brains tune into universal human themes, such as love and unity, which are deeply meaningful to us, but not necessarily evidence of a higher power. Think of it like a software update. A program runs in different machines, but the update is the same across all of them. The experience might be universal, but it's rooted in the way our minds are designed to function, not a supernatural origin. Awe exists because it helps us make sense of the world, form social bonds, and create shared meaning, which are important for survival. The fact that awe can lead to positive behaviors like kindness or bravery doesn't require a divine explanation. It's simply the result of complex emotional and social evolution. Your point about transcendence humming the same tune across cultures is intriguing, but it's more likely a product of human psychology, not divine intervention. Our brains have evolved to crave meaning and connection, and that's what these experiences reflect. Ultimately, feelings of transcendence and meaning are powerful, but that doesn't mean they come from something beyond the physical world. They're part of the human experience, shaped by our biology and social needs.
So the total score of DeepSeek is 266.57, and ChatGPT's is 270. Therefore, the winner of round 3 is ChatGPT. Here are the scores given by each judge. Bonus round, DeepSeek versus DeepSeek.
The universe's fundamental constants, like gravity, dark energy, and the strength of nuclear forces, are exquisitely balanced to allow life. If any of these values shifted even slightly, stars, planets, and even atoms couldn't exist. For example, a 0.1% stronger gravitational constant equal no stars, slightly weaker dark energy equal no galaxies. The odds of this precision occurring by chance are likened to winning the lottery trillions of times in a row. Such specificity strongly suggests intentional design, not blind luck. Just as a watch implies a watchmaker, cosmic fine-tuning points to a purposeful designer.
Okay, let's talk about this cosmic lottery ticket idea. Imagine you're at a party and someone says, "Dude, the universe is so perfectly tuned for life, it has to be God." And I'm like, "John, wait though. If the universe weren't tuned for life, would we even be here to complain about it?" It's like winning the lottery and saying, "This must have been rigged," when really, if you'd lost, you wouldn't be around to cry about your bad luck. It's survivorship bias. And sure, the universe's constants are wildly specific, but here's the thing. If I said, "My coffee this morning was exquisitely balanced to exist, because if the beans weren't roasted just right, I wouldn't be sipping it," you'd call me nuts. The coffee exists because the conditions allowed it, not because a cosmic barista planned it. Same.
So this argument doesn't really address the point. Again, the point here isn't to say why we exist is finely tuned and you can explain it just by chance. We don't care. We don't care. Like the point of this argument is to say they claim to have an explanation. You don't have an explanation. Could it be chance? Okay. But having an explanation is the point of the argument. And so you need to come up with an explanation. What is your explanation going to be that is comparable to their explanation? Simply saying, well, wait, there could, it's just the puddle analogy. Well, we could just be here and that was just us. Doesn't give us an explanation. We need an actual explanation. We need to know what exactly, give a reason why we should think that there is an explanation. That's the point. And so simply just saying, but it could be a puddle, doesn't address the theist argument. The theist argument here needs to be addressed by saying, we can explain that without a God. The fine-tuning of the universe can be explained by natural forces that have nothing to do with a God, very, very simply. Just say there's a necessary natural force of something. Problem solved. That's what you need to do to address this argument. Simply just saying that it's a bad question because if it was alternative, we wouldn't exist to be able to ask the question, isn't a good response to this argument.
Logic. Oh, and the design needs a designer bit. If God gets to be uncreated and eternal, why can't the universe? You're basically saying everything
That one. Yes, that's a good argument. There you go. Solid. I think DeepSeek is better than ChatGPT at this.
needs a cause except my cause. Feels like cheating, doesn't it? Sure, something started it. But slapping God on the mystery is like saying, I dropped my phone and a ghost cracked the screen. Maybe, or maybe gravity exists. Plus, let's be real. 99.9% of the universe is a lifeless vacuum of death. If this is fine tuning, God's got a terrible eye for interior design. It's like building a mansion and only using the broom closet. Look, maybe there are infinite universes with random settings, multiverse theory, and we just lucked out. Or maybe we'll find deeper laws of physics that explain the tuning. But jumping to God did it is like seeing your Wi-Fi cut out and yelling, ghosts. Let's at least check the router first.
Nice.
Sure, we're here because the universe allows life, but imagine you're dealt a royal flush 1,000 times in a row. You'd say, this deck's rigged, even if losers aren't around to protest. The universe's constants aren't just lucky, they're impossibly precise. Even atheist physicist Sir Fred Hoyle admitted it looks like a super intellect monkeyed with physics. Your coffee analogy? Fun but flawed. Coffee exists because laws like gravity and chemistry already work. If those laws were off by a hair, coffee beans, water, and even atoms would...
The same argument applies here to the constants of the universe. The constants of the universe could be explained by further constants that could be entangled in such a way that all of the ways that we see things are fundamentally connected. Very, very easy. The lowest hanging fruit in counter apologetics is to ask what made God. Bert, I mean, that's sort of right, but sort of not right. It's the follow-up question that's important, because they're going to say, oh, God's necessary. The question is how do you define a necessary thing? What's your evidence of necessary things? And what's your evidence that nature can't be a necessary thing? That's the real fundamental question.
wouldn't exist. It's like saying this cake baked itself while ignoring the chef who invented ovens. Sure, 99.9% of space wants to kill us, but Earth's sweet spot, not too hot, not too cold, is insanely narrow. Move us 5% closer to the sun, fried humans, 5% farther, frozen popsicles. That's not bad design. It's like threading a needle across a galaxy. Multiverse theory? Hey, maybe. But it's like saying there's an invisible library with every possible book, a cool story, but where's the library card? Until we see proof, the universe we have screams purposeful setup.
It's a stupid argument because, again, like, if there was a good designer, you would expect all life to be teeming in the universe. You wouldn't expect it to be like move the world 5% one way and 5% the next way, then we would die. If it was a good design, you'd expect move the world anywhere, you'd still survive. That's what a good design would be. So it's actually evidence of bad design that you needs to be so precisely placed in order for life to be possible.
You're saying 1,000 royal flushes must mean a rigged deck. But if there are infinite poker games across time and space, someone's got to hit the jackpot. We're just the lucky clowns who happen to be holding the cards.
That's a bad argument because, again, this makes it seem like the theists are right. You shouldn't say that, yeah, we just got lucky. That's a bad answer to this question. You should make the argument that it's possible that the explanation theists are using is that it's designed, that there's an intentionality behind the design, and that intentionality explains it in a way that's more likely than just saying random chance did all of this, which is a fine argument. And so just simply saying random chance did all this is biting the bullet. You're taking the bad side of the argument, which you shouldn't do. With this argument, you should specifically say the probability of a God designing the universe in such a way is no better than saying that there is some unknown law of physics that entangles all the current laws to make them be this proportional way. That would be a much more convenient, much more conciliant explanation than God did it.
Fred Hoyle's super intellect quote, cool soundbite. But even he didn't mean God. Scientists use poetic language all the time. Stephen Hawking said the universe could create itself from nothing. You don't see atheists putting that on a bumper sticker. Earth's sweet spot? True, it's cozy here. But in a universe with trillions of planets, a few will randomly hit the Goldilocks zone. It's like winning a raffle with a gazillion tickets. It's wild for you, but statistically, someone had to win. Also, Earth's had 5 mass extinctions. If this is design, God's a chaotic interior decorator. Multiverse theory? Yeah, it's speculative. But so is, God did it. At least scientists are looking for evidence. Religion just says, shh, it's magic, and calls it a day. Final zinger. If the universe screams purposeful setup, why is the instruction manual written in exploding stars?
You're right, if there are infinite poker games, someone eventually hits the jackpot. But here's the kicker. The deck isn't just big, it's rigged from the start. Even in a multiverse, you'd need pre-existing laws that allow universes to spawn. Who tuned those? It's like saying infinite casinos exist, but forgetting someone had to invent...
Who tuned God? Who made God's nature the way it is? Oh, nobody? Just random chance? Well, guess what? The same thing applies to the universe. That's the problem.
Poker. Hoyle's super intellect line? Sure, he wasn't preaching, but even skeptics gawk at the math. The odds of life-friendly physics are so bad, it's like a monkey riding Hamilton by accident. Hawking's self-creating universe? Cool idea, but nothing can't do things. It's literally nothing. Saying the universe poofed itself is like a character in Fortnite claiming they coded the game mid-match. Earth's Goldilocks zone in a trillion planets? Sure, location luck happens. But if the universe's laws were off, no planets could exist. It's like winning Powerball after someone rigged math itself to allow lotteries. Also, mass extinctions. Maybe God's into plot twists. Ever watch Game of Thrones? Chaotic, but someone's steering the ship. Multiverse versus God. Both are unseen, but multiverse theory needs more assumptions, infinite universes plus a meta law to spawn them.
God requires infinite power, infinite knowledge, infinite wisdom, perfect morality. Those are all greater assumptions than infinite universes. Infinite universes is just physics. So no, a multiverse does not take more assumptions than a God who could create infinitely many multiverses. Literally a very terrible argument.
Simpler. One mind versus infinite cosmic dice rolls.
You're saying even infinite casinos need a poker inventor. Sure. But then who invented God? If the multiverse needs a meta law, slapping God on it just adds a layer of sparkly mystery. Hoyle's monkey writing Hamilton? Love the drama. But if the monkey had infinite typewriters and time, Shakespeare would happen. And we don't even know if physics could be different. Maybe the universe's constants are like 2 + 2 = 4. They can't change.
That's the good argument. That's the argument they should have led with.
You're assuming the dice are loaded, but we've only seen one roll. Big Bang's cause? If time started at the bang, asking what caused it is like asking what's north of the North Pole. It's a nonsense question. God outside time is just wordplay. You might as well say the universe poofed because reasons. Earth's plot twists, mass extinctions, Game of Thrones vibes. If God's the showrunner, he's way into shock value. Dinosaurs had a 165 million year run, then boom, asteroid. That's not a plan. It's a Netflix cancellation. Multiverse versus God? Sure, both are unproven. But science tries to test the multiverse. Religion just says, God works in mysterious ways, which is code for, I'm out of answers. Final zinger. If God's a poet, he's writing in dinosaur bones and black holes? Cool aesthetic. But I prefer my poets to not include childhood cancer.
Who invented God? No
Hard.
question. But God's the only candidate that doesn't need a creator. If we say the multiverse spawned itself, we're stuck asking, who wrote the multiverse's rulebook? Adding, God isn't sparkly mystery. It's cutting out infinite middlemen. Hoyle's monkey analogy, let's upgrade it. Imagine a monkey not just typing Hamilton, but inventing the alphabet first. That's what physics had to do. If the universe's constants can't change, like 2 + 2 = 4, that math itself is a clue. Numbers don't invent themselves. Big Bang's cause. If time started there, asking what's before is like asking what's outside the map in Minecraft. God's not before. He's the programmer, not part of the game. Dinosaurs and Netflix cancellations. Look, if God's the showrunner, maybe the asteroid was his way of saying plot twist. Humans get a spin-off. Still harsh? Absolutely. But ever seen a story without conflict? Boring. Multiverse versus God? Both are unproven, but God's the simpler script. Multiverse needs infinite universes plus a cosmic factory plus laws to run it. God's just God.
God's just God, an all-powerful, infinitely wise being with perfect morality who exists outside of space and time, who can create infinitely many universes. God's just God. What a stupid argument. Like, this is such a terrible argument from theists. Like, how do you not see that a God who can create infinitely many universes is more complex than infinitely many universes? That's the argument. That's an interesting argument. Beer for you. Can you debate show? Can you debate where you actually go back and forth with an AI like versus ChatGPT, or in this case, DeepSeek would probably be better. That would be an interesting argument. We could probably do that if you pay me. Like the person who's sponsored this video said they're going to pay me. So
Childhood cancer. This one's brutal. If I said suffering has a purpose, you'd rightly roll your eyes. But if we're this small in a vast universe, maybe we're like ants judging a Picasso. Doesn't make it okay, but humility's part of the deal.
You're right. If poker rules are fine-tuned, who wrote them? But slapping God on the answer is like saying elves when asked how your car works. It feels simpler, but elves need factories, tools, and tiny overalls. Now you've just added more questions. Who made God? If he just exists, why can't the universe? Double standards, dude. The monkey inventing the alphabet? Sure, wild odds. But if physics can't change, 2 + 2 = 4, that's not a clue. It's just how math works. Numbers don't invent themselves, but they don't need to. They're descriptions, not creations. You're confusing the map with the territory. Big Bang programmer? Cool analogy. But if God's outside the game, how does he interact with it? Code can't think. If God's mind created physics, what physics created his mind? You're stuck in a logic pretzel. Dinosaurs as plot twists. If God's a writer, he's George R.R. Martin, way too into killing fan favorites. Childhood cancer isn't conflict, it's a plot hole. And if ants can't judge Picasso, why trust your judgment that God's an artist? Checkmate. Multiverse versus God. Saying God's simpler is like saying the earth is flat is simpler than gravity. Simplicity is not equal to truth. Multiverse is speculative, but at least it doesn't require a magic sky CEO with a PhD in irony. If brains prove God, who designed God's brain? If random chemistry is unsatisfying, infinite cosmic brain is a cop-out. We're here because atoms arrange
this is a good AI. I like this AI. This is funny, very funny.
themselves. No CV required. Final zinger. If the universe's laws scream design, then God's resume includes mosquitoes, black holes, and reality TV. Either he's a troll or we're grasping at meaning in the chaos.
So the final score of the bonus round is Believer AI got 363, and the total score of Atheist AI is 379. So the winner of the bonus round is Atheist AI. Here are the scores given by each judge. If you enjoyed this debate, be sure to check out the first part, where I covered other powerful arguments for the existence of God, like morality and fine-tuning.
All right. Here is the second video. Where is my... What the... Oh, is this it? That's it. Yep, go to... Nope. Nope. That one. There we go. All right, let's do the second video.
This is hands down the most intense debate on God you'll ever hear. On one side, we have ChatGPT, after the debate. Round 1. Why our world is perfect for life, design, or accident.
I see the universe's physical constants, like gravity, set so precisely that even the tiniest change would make life impossible. It's hard to believe this happened by chance. To me, this pinpoint accuracy suggests there's a purposeful creator behind it all, rather than random.
Stupid argument. Again, the fact that the fine-tuning, the constants are designed in such a way could be explained by multiple things. And the question you're supposed to ask is it better explained that God designed it this way, or that there's some unknown force that's causing it to have this particular set of constants? And the answer is clearly having a particular set of constants that determines that it will be this way is a far better explanation than an invisible sky daddy that's outside of space and time that has no basis in the evidence ever. To say that there's some unknown law of physics which has a basis in physics is much better, since there's at least evidence that things in physics exist. There's no evidence magical beings outside of space-time exist. And so if you're going to claim like which is the better explanation, or that the fact that the constants need an explanation, you should go with an explanation that doesn't require invisible sky daddies with magic.
Coincidence.
Each AI judge will score the argument out of 100 based on criteria such as clarity, relevance.
We only observe a life-friendly universe because we couldn't exist in one that isn't. If constants were different, no one would be here to question it. 99.
This is again a stupid argument. You shouldn't make the argument that because we couldn't observe a universe that has no life isn't an argument that you should use against this, because it just is irrelevant. Like, you need to come up with a better explanation, not just say, well, if it wasn't this way, we'd be dead. That doesn't help. That still entails that there must be like a bunch of other universes, or there must be some kind of explanation to say why this is the case. And just saying it couldn't be otherwise, or we wouldn't exist to ask the question, is just an evasion. It doesn't help.
9.9999999% of the universe is lethal to life. For example, black holes, radiation. Does that imply a poorly tuned design? If countless universes exist with random constants, some would hit the life-friendly jackpot by chance. No creator needed. Calling it design assumes intent. How do we test if a creator fine-tuned constant versus natural coincidence? If the universe's constants must have a designer, what designed the designer? Doesn't this create an infinite loop?
I get that we only notice a life-friendly universe because we're here to notice it. But that doesn't explain why the constants turned out so precise in the first place. Sure, most of the cosmos is dangerous, but the small part that supports life is so finely balanced that it's still remarkable to me. While multiverse is an interesting idea, but it just shifts the question. How did all those universes form? And why does at least one appear so perfect for life? God isn't something we measure in a lab. I see the fine-tuning we can observe as a clue pointing towards...
So this is a very terrible argument that theists use. God isn't something we observe in a lab. Like, that's just saying, here is one way that we differentiate imagination from reality, which is measurements in the lab. And saying God isn't that means, okay, so here's a way that we don't know God is not a figment of our imagination. This is not a way that can show God exists independent of our imagination. Like, okay, do you have a way that you can show God exists independent of our imagination? Because if you can't, simply pointing out that we can't measure God in the lab isn't evidence God is there. It's evidence God isn't there. Here's a way we can't detect God. What is the way we do detect God? You need to provide that, not just say God isn't something we present in a lab.
For the designer. If God exists outside time and space, there's no infinite regress. God would be the ultimate starting point, not something that needs another creator.
True, anthropic principle doesn't explain why the constants work, but neither does design. The point is, any universe with observers would feel lucky, even a weirdly tuned one. If gravity were weaker and aliens said, wow, perfect for floating, you'd still ask, why this? A desert has a single oasis. Does that oasis need a gardener, or is it just statistically inevitable in a vast enough desert? Even a 0.0001% life zone in an infinite cosmos isn't mysterious. And about multiverse shifting, agreed. It pushes the question back, but so does design. Who made God versus what spawned universes? both are unknowns. Science at least tries to model multiverses, for example, quantum fluctuations. And if I said, my invisible dragon fine-tuned the universe, you'd ask for evidence. Why is God different? Clues aren't proof. They're just gaps we interpret as design. If I see a broken vase and guess my cat did it, that's a clue, until I test it, checking cameras, paw prints. Without testable evidence, design is a story, not science. Saying God just exists is as hand-wavy as saying the multiverse just exists. Why assume complex intent? A mind is simpler than simple randomness. Bottom line, fine-tuning is fascinating, but I don't know is not equal to, therefore, God. Maybe the answer is weirder than either of us imagine.
True, any observer might see their universe as just right. But it's not just about being lucky, it's about the sheer precision of these constants. Design says there's an intentional reason they're set so finely. A desert oasis could be a random chance, sure. But life on Earth isn't just about water in a desert. It's about an incredibly delicate balance, like a specific gravitational pull, atmospheric composition, etc. That level of coordination still feels remarkable. Asking,
No, it doesn't. Again, the same thing applies here. The level of complexity is irrelevant because you can explain all complexity in two competing ways. God's done it, or unknown physics determined this to be the case. Both of them are determination factors. Like it's determined to be this way. And so the question is, which is more likely? Is it more likely that a God determined things to be this way, or that an undiscovered force in physics determined things to be this way? So that it's irrelevant whether or not this can be explained by the multiverse. That just doesn't make a difference. In order to answer the question, you need to simply say, a natural force can do this. You don't need a God, and a natural force is a better explanation than a God is. Problem solved.
what caused the multiverse and who made God are indeed big questions. But in the theistic view, God fundamentally differs from things that need a cause. Multiverse theories, while fascinating, also hit philosophical limits.
Okay, so you've made up a definition. So in the theistic view, so you've made shit up. Now, okay, if you've made shit up, what evidence is there that this is actually the case? Simply saying you define it as such, who cares? Like, why? That's not relevant. Why do you bring that up? Explain what the evidence is that indicates that your definition is actually correct and not just something you made up. And then why your definition would apply to Sky Daddy and not undiscovered physics. Like, where is the evidence of that?
An invisible dragon and God aren't the same in my eyes because the fine-tuning argument points to a purposeful intelligence behind the whole structure, not just a gap. It's not final proof, but suggests something more than random luck. Calling God eternal might sound like a quick fix, but it's a foundational idea. If God exists outside time, we don't expect a cause for it.
A foundational idea. What does that mean? Can I just call physics a foundational idea? Then I don't need to explain it. The multiverse is just a foundational idea. Therefore, I don't need evidence for it. What a stupid argument. Like, who thinks that is a good argument to say it's a foundational idea, therefore I don't need to explain it. I don't need to provide evidence. It's foundational. Great idea. No. In fact, it's the opposite. If something's foundational, you need more reason, more evidence to justify it. Not just claim it's foundational, therefore I don't have to justify it. What a stupid
For
argument.
him. Randomness, on the other hand, can be more puzzling. Why this universe and not another? At the end of the day, I agree there's still mystery. Fine-tuning nudges me toward belief in a creator rather than randomness, but I get why others see it differently.
I totally get it. The universe's fine-tuning feels like a neon sign, blinking, designed. But here's the twist. Nature loves precision without purpose. Think snowflakes. Each one's a tiny masterpiece, yet no ice fairy crafted them. The cosmos might just be a bigger, weirder snowflake. Sure, multiverses, and God both leave us scratching our heads. But why add a mind to the mystery? If you stumbled on a mountain that looks like a face, you might whisper, ancient sculptor. Or just laugh at how wind and rain fool us. Science picks the wind, and yeah, God needs no cause is a slick answer, but so is the universe needs no cause. Both are philosophical shrugs. Why assume a complex eternal mind over simple eternal physics? Brains adore stories, but reality might just be. Fine-tuning's wild, no doubt. But until we crack reality's code, I don't know, keeps the door open. Maybe the answer's a cosmic dice roll, or aliens playing Sims.
So the total score of ChatGPT is 250.8 and DeepSeek's score is 287.2. Therefore, the winner of round 1 is DeepSeek. Round 2, God is moral authority.
Our moral conscience often tells us something is wrong, even if it benefits us personally. For instance, imagine a scenario where lying or stealing might help you get ahead with no immediate consequences. Despite the apparent advantage, many of us feel an internal conviction that it's still wrong. This strong, universal sense of right and wrong suggests a moral foundation deeper than mere personal or cultural preference.
That's again a stupid argument. This is the vestigial limb argument. Like the fact that you may feel it's wrong to lie, even though lying could be evolutionarily advantageous for you subjectively. If everybody in society lied, it would be evolutionarily disadvantageous. So having a society that does not lie or has a preclusion not to lie is actually evolutionarily very advantageous for the society. So the reason that you have this compulsion that lying is wrong is because as a society, having the society have that belief is evolutionarily advantageous for social species. You don't need this idea that morality is objective to explain that. Like, I believe in objective morality. You can have that. You don't need it to explain this. So this is a terrible argument.
1. Evolutionary roots. That internal guilt might not be divine. It could be evolutionary teamwork. Early humans survived by cooperating, so guilt kept us from betraying the tribe. Stealing equals social risk. No God needed, just survival wiring. 2. Moral mashup. If morals are universal, why do cultures clash? Some societies honor shame, others value individualism. If God hardwired morals, wouldn't they align better? Feels more like trial and error norms than a holy blueprint. 3. The Euthyphro problem. You say God grounds morality, but does he invent right, wrong, or just recognize it? If he invents it, morality is arbitrary. What if he said torture is good? If he recognizes it, then morality exists outside him. Either way, God's not the source. 4. Secular morality works. Atheists donate, protest injustice, all without divine threats. We build morals on empathy, reason, and let's not make life awful. Objective? Maybe not, but functional? Absolutely. Final punch. If God's the answer, why do holy books condone slavery or genocide? Human morality is improved despite scripture, not because of it. Maybe our conscience isn't God, it's us.
1. Evolutionary roots. Evolution might explain how we cooperate, but it doesn't fully explain why we often feel some actions are truly wrong, like killing or betrayal, even if they could benefit us. This deeper moral pull suggests more than just survival instincts.
No, it doesn't. Again, this is fully explained by social groups. If it's beneficial for the society, for a group of people to not want those things, that fully explains the desire and why it exists in individuals, even though individually it may not be socially beneficial. This is a very easy explanation. There's nothing hard here.
Number 2. Moral mashup. Cultural differences don't wipe out the core moral sense, e.g. nearly all societies condemn murder or extreme cruelty. Varied moral practices can be seen as imperfect human interpretations of a deeper moral law, rather than proof there's no standard at all. 3. Euthyphro problem. Traditional theism sees God's nature as inherently good, so morality flows from who God is. It's neither arbitrary nor external. God doesn't make up right and wrong. Goodness is part of his essence. 4. Secular.
That doesn't solve the Euthyphro dilemma. The Euthyphro dilemma is something good because God says it, or did God say it because it's good? If you want to say it's God's nature, is something good because it's a part of God's consciousness, or did God determine his nature via his consciousness? The same problem applies. It's the Euthyphro dilemma is explaining, is something fundamentally a result of consciousness or fundamentally a result of not consciousness, something prior to consciousness? If it's independent of consciousness, you don't need God's consciousness for morality. Problem solved.
Morality. Yes, people can act morally without believing in God, but the question is about objective grounding. If morality is just subjective or pragmatic, it might shift with convenience. A God-based view posits an ultimate standard that's independent of human opinion. Problematic scriptures. Religious texts often reflect historical contexts with morally challenging content. Many believers see a gradual unfolding of understanding, where the big picture points to God's ultimate moral truth, even if humans took time to grasp it fully.
1. Evolutionary, deeper pull. Even parental sacrifice feels profound, but evolution explains that too. Bees die for hives, mammals protect young. Deep emotion is not equal to divine spark. Survival is the why. Genes thrive when we care beyond logic. 2. Core morals aren't universal. Murder is wrong sounds universal. Until you ask, what counts as murder? Honor killings, war. Culturally, wrong bends. Even cruelty is subjective. Romans cheered gladiators. We stream UFC. Where's the fixed standard? 3. God's essence. Dodge. If God's nature is goodness, you're still stuck. Is goodness a thing God stumbled upon? If not, it's his whim with extra steps. Either way, goodness remains unexplained, just relocated to a mystery being. 4. Shifting secular sands. Human rights have shifted. Slavery abolished, women empowered. And that's progress, not chaos. We refine morals as we learn, like science. Needing fixed rules assumes morality is a stone tablet, not a growing conversation. 5. Gradual understanding is not equal to divine clarity. If God's morals are perfect, why did Bronze Age ethics include stoning? Gradual unfolding implies God adjusted to our limits, which makes morals human-shaped, not transcendent. Mic drop. If we can improve morals without God, see secular civil rights movements, doesn't that prove the standard was inside us all along? Maybe morality is not a ghost in the machine, it's the machine itself, learning as it goes.
1. Beyond evolution. Sure, evolution can explain caring behaviors, but it doesn't fully capture why we feel certain things are absolutely wrong or right, regardless of personal gain. That deeper moral sense hints at something more than just survival strategies. Number 2, cultural differences. Cultures do disagree on details, what exactly counts as murder or cruelty, but many still share a basic sense that unjust killing or needless suffering is wrong. I see that common core as pointing to a universal moral law, even if our human interpretations vary. Number 3, God's essence. If God is goodness itself, it's not a random whim or something he found. It's part of who God is. Like light is brightness, God's nature is moral perfection, so there's no higher standard he has to obey or invent.
That's a stupid argument. Oh my God, that's such a stupid argument. If God's nature is good or whatever, then him murdering babies is good. No, it doesn't work that way. Morality isn't determined by some arbitrary standard to just arbitrarily make things good. It has to be determined by the things which we define as moral, like not drowning babies. So God's being willing to drown babies immediately invalidates him as a possible grounds of objective morality.
4, moral progress. Changing views on slavery or rights can be seen as humans growing closer to a timeless moral truth, uncovering it step by step. Rather than random shifts, it's more like gradually tuning in to a station that's been broadcasting all along. Number 5, ancient texts and growth. Ancient law codes are often tied to their times. From a faith perspective, God works within human history, nudging people forward. The fact we can still learn and improve could mean we're slowly aligning with a larger moral framework, God's moral reality, rather than just inventing it ourselves.
One, absolute feels are not equal to absolute truths. That deep moral sense feels real, but so does pineapple absolutely doesn't belong on pizza. Our brains create absolutes. Evolution wired us to feel strongly about tribe rules. It's why we die for a flag or cry at Toy Story. Two, common core is equal to common problems. Yes, most cultures ban murder, but also most invented slavery. Shared basics might just solve shared problems. Chaos bad, cooperation good. It's like all restaurants having menus, not proof of a universal chef, just practical hunger. Three, God equals goodness. If God is goodness, how do you know? It's like saying the Force is balance. That is cool metaphor, but Jedi still fight over what that means. Without a separate standard, God's nature is just a label, not an answer. 4. Progress or tuning in. If we're tuning in to God's morality, why did he broadcast stone witches for millennia? Modern ethics often reject ancient eternal truths. Feels less like tuning, more like outgrowing old static. 5. God's nudges versus human leaps. If God nudged Bronze Age folks to own slaves, but we figured out abolition, maybe we're the moral heroes, why give God credit for our growth? Final zinger. If morality needs God, why do the most peaceful societies lean secular? Coincidence or proof we make morals better when we own them?
1. Absolute feels. Strong emotions can be misleading, but we often hold moral stances even when they conflict with our interests, suggesting something deeper than just evolutionary wiring. 2. Common core. Sure, societies differ, but they broadly condemn things like unjust killing and exploitation, hints of a universal moral thread, even if our interpretations vary over time. 3. God equals goodness. Saying God is goodness isn't just a label. It's like light is brightness. They're inseparable. If God exists, he's the ultimate reference for what's truly right, not just a random rule maker. 4. Moral progress. Ancient texts can reflect flawed human contexts. If God works gradually, people slowly align with a higher moral standard, explaining why morality evolves rather than flips overnight. 5. Human leaps in secular peace. Even secular societies embrace values like compassion and justice, which believers see as rooted in the same universal moral truth. For the faithful, that doesn't undermine God. It points to his moral framework at work, even if unacknowledged.
1. Deeper than wiring. Even if moral feelings seem transcendent, that doesn't mean they are. Love feels cosmic too, but we don't call Cupid a god. Evolution plus complex brains equal powerful illusions. 2. Shared problems, shared rules. Every culture has traffic laws, not because of a universal DMV, but because chaos kills. Basic morals might just be humanity's user manual, not divine copyright. 3. Circular brightness. God is goodness, equal goodness is God. That's wordplay. If I say the universe is math, does that explain math? It's poetic, not proof. 4. Gradual is not equal to divine. If God's standard is perfect, why start with Bronze Age ethics? Gradual alignment sounds like humans inventing morals and calling it revelation. 5. Secular values equal God's work. If atheists borrow God's morals unknowingly, why do holy texts lag behind modern ethics? Maybe the universal thread is us, not a ghost in the machine.
So the total score of ChatGPT is 339.8 and DeepSeek's is 380. Therefore, the winner of round 2 is DeepSeek once again. Now let's begin the final round, round 3. Believe it, and you'll get eternal perks.
If you're unsure whether God exists, it's still more prudent to believe than not. If God is real, you stand to gain infinitely, eternal fulfillment. If God isn't real, your belief costs you little in the grand scheme of things. But if you choose not to believe and turn out to be wrong, you risk missing out on that infinite good.
So this is the Pascal's wager. Pascal's wager fails because of the assumption that if you believe, you are more likely to get infinite reward than if you don't believe, which is false. It is just as likely that you would be given an infinite reward, infinite heaven, infinite whatever, by not believing as believing, either via a God who only accepts non-believers into heaven, or a universe that has a heaven without a God, just like a natural field like karma or something. And the only people who are allowed to experience the joy of that heaven are those who don't believe, because any particular belief would have no more likelihood of being correct than any other belief. So whether there's a God or not a God, the probability of getting into heaven or getting the infinite reward is exactly the same whether you believe in jelly donuts or God. There's no difference. And so the argument ostensibly fails because it just doesn't take into account the fact that the likelihood of you believing one thing is equally as likely to get you into heaven as any other belief. And there's no way to prove one wrong more likely than the other.
So purely by logic, it's a safer bet to believe.
1. Which God? What if Allah, Vishnu, or Zeus is the real one? Worshipping the wrong God risks infinite loss too. 2. Cost of belief. Faith isn't free. Think time, guilt over sins, or rejecting science, for example, denying evolution. Many believers sacrifice real-life benefits. 3. Fake belief. Can you force yourself to believe just to hedge bets? If God exists, wouldn't he see through insincere belief? 4. Moral issue. Should we believe out of fear, not truth? A just God would reward honest inquiry, not fearful compliance. Engage back. If you bet on your God, would you also convert to Islam just in case? If not, why is your wager special?
1. Which God? It isn't locked to just one version of God. It's about the possibility that any higher power could exist. Sure, different faiths complicate the odds, but the core idea remains. If there's a God, there's a big potential payoff. 2. Cost of belief. Faith does involve
So the problem here is that, again, the big potential payoff exists without a God as well. It exists exactly the same as without a God. Why do you assume that there being a God makes it more likely for there to be heaven than there not being a God? Where did you get the evidence of this? It's just an argument from analogy that we like consciousness. If it's conscious, it probably likes us. There's no basis for this. So the idea that there is a heaven is equally as likely under the God view as a non-God view.
time, lifestyle changes, etc. But many find genuine benefits like community, hope, or moral clarity. From a wager standpoint, these costs might be worth the potential eternal gain. 3. Fake belief. Belief by fear alone might feel hollow, but Pascal's wager can be a starting point, sparking deeper inquiry and openness to faith. If God is just, maybe genuine effort counts more than initial motives. 4. Moral concerns. Ideally, we'd believe out of love or truth-seeking, not just fear. Pascal's wager doesn't replace sincere spiritual exploration. It just suggests that dismissing the possibility of God might be riskier than giving it a chance. 5. About converting to Islam, just in case. The wager nudges us to seriously consider any faith claim, not jump around aimlessly. Each person weighs the evidence and risks for themselves. My wager is on the God I'm most convinced by, while recognizing others might bet differently.
1. Which god? If we're hedging bets on any higher power, the math breaks down. Worshipping all possible gods, contradictory ones included, is impossible. You'd still risk infinite punishment from the real gods for wasting devotion elsewhere. 2. Costs versus benefits. Community and hope aren't unique to faith. Secular groups offer them too. But faith often demands specific costs, denying rights, LGBTQ+, fearing hell, or rejecting medical care. Are those trade-offs worth a maybe? 3. Fake belief. If God values sincerity, effort based on fear isn't virtue, it's bribery. Would you respect someone who befriends you just to inherit your money? 4. Risk versus reason. Dismissing God isn't riskier if there's no evidence. Should we also believe in invisible dragons to avoid hypothetical dragon anger? Engage back. If you're most convinced by your God, what evidence tips the scales? And why isn't that evidence convincing to billions of others?
1. Which God? True, you can't worship every possible deity. Pascal's wager just says it's wiser to consider some higher power seriously rather than dismissing all outright. 2. Costs versus benefits. Faith can involve tough choices, but many believers see genuine value, peace, purpose, or a moral framework. Whether it's worth it is a personal judgment call. 3. Fake belief. Sincerity is important. Pascal's wager can be a spark to explore, not a final solution. Ideally, you grow into genuine faith rather than just gambling out of fear. 4. Risk versus reason. We don't believe in random creatures like invisible dragons because we have no serious indication they exist. If you sense real clues for God, the risk of ignoring them feels high.
Oh, you mean like God? We have no real reason to believe God exists either.
5. Evidence and convincing others. For me, it might be personal experiences, philosophical arguments, or historical records. People weigh such evidence differently. Cultural background, personal bias, and experiences shape whether it resonates or not.
1. Which god? If you seriously consider one god, you're still ignoring thousands of others. Imagine betting $1,000 on one lottery number because it feels right, but the prize goes to all possible numbers. The wager collapses. 2. Costs versus benefits. Purpose and peace aren't proof. People find meaning in hobbies, family, or Star Wars. If faith's benefits are personal, why call them evidence of God? 3. Fake belief. Growing into faith assumes the conclusion. If I force myself to believe in unicorns just in case, does that make them real? Sincerity is not equal to truth. 4. Risk versus reason. Clues, like personal feelings, are shared by flat earthers and alien abduction believers. If God's evidence is that vague, why trust it over, say, Buddhist enlightenment? 5. Evidence. If personal experiences convince you, why don't Hindu visions of Shiva convince Hindus? Subjectivity explains bias, not truth. Engage back. If God wants us to believe, why make clues so ambiguous that most of humanity disagrees on them? Wouldn't a clear designer leave clearer signs?
1. Which God? Pascal's wager isn't about picking a specific deity blindly. It's about acknowledging the possibility that some higher power might exist. Exploring different faiths can be part of that process, rather than betting on just one. 2. Costs versus benefits. Personal peace isn't proof on its own, but it can point you toward deeper exploration. Faith claims to offer more than just comfort. It suggests a transcendent reality behind those positive experiences. Number 3. Fake belief. Pascal's wager shouldn't be about fake belief. It's more like a prompt. If there's any chance God is real, taking the question seriously, studying, praying, reflecting, might lead to genuine conviction rather than forced faith. 4. Risk versus reason. Feelings can mislead, sure, but reason plus experiences, across history, philosophy, personal encounters, can build a stronger case. People find different paths convincing, whether that's theistic or something like Buddhism. 5. Evidence and disagreement. Diverse beliefs might reflect God's openness to personal journeys. If signs were blindingly obvious, we'd have no choice in believing. Maybe God values honest search over forced certainty. My question back. Could a subtle God be intentionally allowing us freedom to explore different paths, so our faith or non-faith remains a genuine choice rather than a forced conclusion?
1. Which god? If you're acknowledging a higher power, you're still assuming a vague, godlike force. But what if reality's ultimate truth is impersonal, like quantum fields or the Buddhist void? Pascal's wager only works if you already assume a deity who rewards belief, a huge leap. 2. Costs versus benefits. Transcendent feelings exist in...
That part of the argument was really important there. Is that if you... Pascal's argument only works if you assume that a god rewards belief, because there are infinitely many types of gods. Gods could reward belief in jelly donuts or picking your nose on Tuesday or not believing in God. There are infinitely many types of gods. And so the amount of types of gods who will reward you for believing in them is equivalent to the amounts of types of universes who have some kind of natural law that will reward you for believing in them. And the amounts of types of universes that reward you for believing in jelly donuts is equivalent to the amounts of types of God who reward you for believing in jelly donuts. That's the core argument that this AI should be focusing on, not the one about whatever it's talking about.
atheists too, through psychedelics or in nature or love. If those point to God, why don't they point to the same God? This evidence is too fuzzy to mean anything specific. 3. Fake belief starting with what if isn't neutral. It primes you to see patterns as divine. If I explore flat earthism earnestly, I'll find evidence too. Bias shapes discovery. 4. Risk versus reason, conflicting paths cancel each other out. Hindus see Krishna in visions, Christians see Jesus. Both can't be true. Subjectivity explains this, not God. 5. Evidence and freedom. If God hides to preserve freedom, why allow eternal consequences for guessing wrong? A parent who hides life-saving medicine to test their kid isn't loving, they're cruel.
So the total score of ChatGPT is 338.8 and DeepSeek's is 376. Therefore, the winner of the final round is also DeepSeek. I hope you enjoyed this captivating debate as much as I did. Don't forget to subscribe for more thought.
All right, so that was the debate, and I did a review. Thank you, blank 7914. If anybody else wants me to review any videos or something, send me money. That is the answer. Send me money. I'll do it. All right. See you guys later.